Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving back into the world of fishing drones, and let me tell you, this one right over here, which is the Fisherman Max by SwellPro, packs some serious mind-blowing features that I can't wait to share with you. Now, we all know the risks and challenges that come with investing in a fishing drone, especially when you're shelling out a few thousands of dollars. The last thing you want is to lose that investment out on the water. So the big question is, could this be the only fishing drone you will ever need? Stick around to find out for yourself. I promise you won't be disappointed. Now, this drone has been sitting on my shelf for a while now, and today it's finally time to put it into the test. I'm incredibly excited to share my thoughts with you. Let's dive right in. Now, if you don't know the history of SwellPro, and I'm definitely not going to give you an history lesson, but I will only say that SwellPro was founded as a pioneer company that manufactures waterproof drones. They have made a long way till now, but the reason I'm saying this is since when they first came out, they had only one model, and it was a modular drone that you could use for fishing and photographing, depending on the accessory that you purchased it with. However, most of their customers were getting that for fishing purposes only, but on the other hand, making only one modular model made it quite expensive for anglers. So lately, SwellPro decided to make more series of drones instead of making just one drone for everything. They kept the splash drone, where you can have a great camera and also fishing accessories, and they made another series, this time special only for fishing, and they called it the Fisherman. And today I will review the latest model of their Fisherman series, which is called the Fisherman Max, and which is rated in the category of heavy lifting fishing drones. The reason I say heavy lifting is because many anglers use drones for fishing nowadays, but all the popular drones such as the Phantom or Mavic, which are great drones and also are extremely popular among anglers, still their maximum weight it can take is between 1 pound to 2 pounds. Depends on the specific model, of course, while the Fisherman Max can take way more than that. Now, before I start, I have to say that SwellPro sent me this drone for review, but in no means it affected my thoughts about it. And whoever is not familiar with me or with my reviews, I am doing my best to have my reviews as short as possible, but at the same time as comprehensive as possible. So no important or relevant details will be left out, so without further ado, let's start with the review. Okay. I have to say that I'm quite impressed with the way this drone arrived. It is well packed and secure. It's quite heavy compared to other drones I have with me. The drone itself feels good in my hands and does not give any impression of cheap plastic or something that can easily break. Another thing to mention before I go over the features of the drone is its carry case. This drone comes with a good case that feels right and strongly enough to carry the drone with you. And since the arms of the drones are foldable, the carry case is smaller, which means it will be easier for me to put it in my car, and even easier when carrying it by hand when I'm going to the beach. One thing that I would appreciate is having wheels and a long handle to it, something like a trolley case. This way it will be easier for me when carrying that along with my rods and other stuff when I'm going fishing. As for the propellers, as you can see, they are big, and I don't have any other drones with such big propellers except for only one drone which I built by myself. The remote controller is wider than others, but at the same time feels good in my hands. It gives the impression that it's made of quality materials. Let's start with the important numbers of the drone. And as I said before, it is a waterproof drone, and its waterproof rating is IP67. It weighs 8.3 pounds, which is almost 3.8 kilos. Its size, when it is folded, is 12 by 10.5 by 7.5 inches, and when it is unfolded, it's 20 by 20 by 7.5 inches. Its height flying speed is 22 miles per hour when using GPS, and it goes up to 45 miles per hour when it is in ATTI mode. Maximum image transmission is up to 1 kilometer. Bait capacity is up to 8 pounds, which is 3 kilos and 700 grams. The maximum flight time in normal conditions is expected to be 30 minutes. The resistance to winds is up to 40 miles per hour, which is very impressive, but this one is very important. It is important since it's well known that the winds at the beach are stronger than in the city, and also as you fly higher, the winds are stronger. You would be surprised how many people lost their drones on the beach due to high winds. So when you fly your drones at the beach, you need to pay close attention to the wind. In addition, always take into consideration that even when you take out bait and the wind is in your favor, which brings your drone to the drop zone faster, that exact wind will find your drone back when you try to return it to you. Trust me, you can find lots of YouTube videos with people who lost their drones while they were flying their drones back to them. But due to the winds, the drone simply went out of battery and landed on the water. Now, even though this drone is waterproof, still, if the drone lands on the water, let's say 200 meters away from you or even 100 meters away, that won't be an easy task for you rescuing your drone. There is a lot more to say about winds, but maybe I will make a specific video about this, so make sure to subscribe to the channel, and while you do that, don't forget to click on the like button. That will help me make more videos. Last in this drone category are the motors. The Fisherman Max is using powerful 400 kV motors, which, as I said in the beginning, are using 16-inch propellers. Now, regarding the remote controller, like the drone, it is waterproof as well, and this is something that you don't see any other manufacturers making out there. For me, it is very impressive, and as for the waterproof rating, it is rated IP54. Now, I will explain a bit more about waterproofing later in this video, so it will all be clear about what exactly is protected when we say waterproof. Now, since there are two flavors for the Fisherman Max, the basic and the advanced, it means that each flavor has its own remote controller. I have with me the advanced, so I can show you the basic one, but it doesn't really matter for this review. Let's start with some numbers about the remote controllers. The weight is different between the two types. The weight of the basic version, which does not support video streaming, weighs 680 grams and has a screen of 3.6 inches. And its battery life is 9 hours. As for the advanced version, it weighs 709 grams, which means 29 grams more than the basic. It has a screen size of 5 inches, which is much nicer, but on the battery lifetime, here is it dramatically less compared to the basic version with 4 working hours. Both versions have a few things in similar, and this is the charging time, 3 hours, and they also have the same size of 11 by 7.5 by 3 inches. Next is the drone battery. Not much to say here, but as you can see, it is a massive battery. It is a 6S LiPo battery with a capacity of 4500 milliamps. Its size is 8.6 by 4.7 by 2.5 inches, and it weighs 1 kilo and 255 grams. The charging time for this battery is 80 minutes to get into full charge. Now here on the battery you can see it has 4 locking pads which are responsible for securing the battery to the drone. I will show you later how to install it on the drone. Now, remember I told you that there are two flavors for this drone? Well, the camera is the core thing that separates the two. Well, only the advanced version have the camera. This is the 4K camera, which is also waterproof and rated IP67, which is exactly like the drone. It is using 1-axis gimbal with a tilt range of 90 degrees. Now, while the Splash Drone 4, which has a 3-axis gimbal, in fishing, SwellPro assumes that you will be using the camera for better understanding the beach and not for taking outstanding videos, and this is the reason for not having a 3-axis gimbal on this drone. The camera itself has a Sony IMX377 sensor. Probably this doesn't mean a lot to you, but in case it does, it is important. It can take videos in different qualities, which are 4K in 30 frames per second, or like it's called FPS. Another option is 2.7K in 60 FPS, 1080p, which is known also as the Full HD, and it can record this in 30, 60 and 120 FPS, and last 720p, which is also known as the HD, and it can record in 60, 120 and 240 FPS, which is great for slow motion videos. Now, if you don't want to remember everything, I will put them on the screen now, so again you can pause the video and read them calmly. Before I start with the important features of this drone, it is essential for you to understand the challenges that generally exist with drones, and more specifically in fishing drones. The reason I'm saying this is that when I first went over the features of this drone, I was very impressed, since it seems that SwellPro made massive improvements with the Fisherman Max by solving serious problems with the flying drones in general. Second, and more importantly, SwellPro solved some problems related to flying drones on the beach. And it also seems that SwellPro finally understood that anglers, which is their audience, are fishermen and not drone pilots, which is a huge barrier for many anglers out there. As I'm speaking with anglers all the time, I frequently hear the challenges they have when combining their fishing, which is their hobby and they love it, with drones that they need. So it was good to see some nice features in this drone that I'm sure will ease the experience for many anglers I know. Another point to keep in mind is that if you watch other videos reviews for the Fisherman Max or even other videos reviews for different fishing drones, be sure to watch reviews that were made by actual fishermen. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because most drones reviews out there were made by drones pilots and not by fishermen. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not saying that the reviews are not good. On the contrary, there are excellent reviews on YouTube and other platforms, and they even helped me when I first started. But what I'm trying to say is that they don't really understand what are the deal breakers for a fisherman trying to fly a drone. Okay, let's start talking about the features that the Fisherman Max has and which are fundamental for a fishing drone. I will start with the main reason we want a drone for fishing, and that is the casting bait. In short, is the ability of the drone to drop baits over long distances, and in case we want to do it accurately, the drone will need to have a camera installed to make that happen. Without these two things, a drone will never be called a fishing drone, no matter what other features it has. So in this category, the Fisherman Max can take in one flight 2 baits at the same time, summing in a total of 8 pounds, which is 3.7 kilos. And these 8 pounds, it can carry for a distance of 600 meters. Now, it doesn't mean that the Fisherman Max can fly away to no more than 600 meters. It can do much more of that, but these 600 meters is approximately what it can do in case you squeeze it to the performance in terms of weight and distance. So if you load it with lighter baits, the drone will fly longer distances and even for longer times. The next important thing about fishing drones is how many drops you will be able to make on a single battery charge. Now, just to explain this, when the drone is flying with the bait attached to it, its battery drains faster. The heavier the bait, the faster it drains, and according to SwellPro, they say that if you fly a Fisherman Max with a 2 kilo baits and fly it at a distance of 400 meters, you will be able to make 6 drops on a one single charge. Now, I haven't checked that yet, but you can be sure that I will be checking that on my next videos. The next category concerns wind speed. Now, we all know that out on the beach there are stronger winds, and those winds can be a serious threat to your drone. In this category, the Fisherman Max outperforms well, and while most popular drones can fly at winds up to 22 miles per hour, the Fisherman Max is rated for level 6 wind resistance, which means it can fly in winds up to 40 miles per hour, which is almost double than the others, an impressive capability by all means. Next is waterproofing. Now, waterproofing is a fundamental feature when we talk about fishing drones, and in case you don't know, there are many anglers that are using non-waterproof drones for fishing, and trust me, after speaking with so many drone fishing anglers in my life, the number of drones that crashed into the ocean is estimated in hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Now, having a waterproof drone is not a 100% guarantee for your drone. Consider something such as a bird or a frequency disturbance causing your drone to lose its balance and fall into the water. While water won't get into it, the drone, like a rock, will sink immediately into the water. And in case this didn't happen near you, that's quite a bye-bye for your drone. So in order to not be in this situation, the drone needs to have more capabilities, but still, having said that, being waterproof is a crucial thing to start with. And so, as you can guess, the Fisherman Max is completely waterproof. It has a waterproof housing, waterproof motors, and even a waterproof remote controller. Now, keep in mind that the term waterproof is not a true or false statement. There are several levels for a waterproofing. And as I already said, there is a difference between the waterproofing level of the drone and its remote controller. If you remember, I said that the drone is rated as IP67 salt waterproofing, and the remote controller is waterproof rated as IP54. In general, the digits 4, 5, 6, and 7 that I mentioned define 2 levels of protection. The first digit defines the protections against solids, and the second digit defines the water protection. And the way it works is that the higher the number, the better protection you have. Now, let me explain a bit more about what these IP67 and IP54 numbers specifically mean. Because when you hear the term waterproof, you automatically might think that water cannot cause damage to the drone and you are not concerned about your drone or remote controller getting wet, while actually you should be. Let's start with me putting some information on the screen for you about this, so you can pause the video and read it if you want. And while you see that, I will simply say that IP67 means that in terms of solids, where the level is 6, that means that the drone is protected against dust tide, so no ingress of dust can get into the drone. And as for the water level 7, that means that it is also protected against the effects of temporary water submersion on 3 feet deep into the water for a maximum duration of 30 minutes. As for the remote controller, Its solid level is 5, means it is also protected against dust, but not as good as the drone, so it prevents the ingress of dust that could cause harm, and its water protection level is 4, which means it is protected against water splashing that can come from any possible direction. So as you can understand, the Fisherman Max is well protected against water, and while the remote controller is less protected, still no other brands that I'm familiar with are making the remote controllers waterproofed on any level, and you should only be concerned if the remote controller falls into the water, which I believe is not likely to happen when you fish from the shore. The next feature the Fisherman Max has is with these additional floaters that you can attach to the landing gears of the drone, and I will show you how to install them in a moment. And as they suggest, when you fly the Fisherman Max with them, that means that it can float on the water surface. And following my example from the previous section, these floaters solve another water-related problem. So in case the drone falls into the water, it won't sink and it will float on the water. Now, this is still not a 100% guarantee for a drone, since consider the possibility that it falls upside down. So by trying to take off, it will actually try to dive, and you don't want that. But you will see in the next section how even these problems SwellPro solved. Now, while these floaters allow you to land the drone on the water, which sounds cool, I am not recommending anyone to do that. In my opinion, and as a fisherman for many years, I don't have any good reason for wanting to land my drone on the water. And yes, I heard people claiming that by landing it on the water, you can see the fish underneath it. But still, if you have a camera, then seeing the water from above provides you with a better and a wider picture of what's happening in the water than with a camera placed underneath it. By landing the drone on the water, you're simply risking your drone. And the risks that you put your drone in by landing it on the water are not worth it, in my opinion. And when I say risks, I mean such as waves or even big fish that will have some interest in your drone while it is floating on the water surface. And in that situation, you won't have the ability to know that, since you don't have a 360 degrees view. For me, landing the drone on the water is just a gimmick and nothing more than that. But if you still consider landing it on the water, you must fly the drone with these floating bars. But even if you don't want to land the drone on the water, I highly recommend attaching the floating bars when flying the drone for fishing, so if it falls into the water, you increase dramatically your chances of rescuing your drone. The next feature covers the scenario where the drone falls into the water upside down, and this is the flipping capability. The Fisherman Max, like some previous models by SwellPro, can flip straight back into its normal position. This is incredibly important and might save your drone in case of some failure. However, I would say that in case your drone falls into the water due to losing its signal with the remote controller, this flip feature won't help you unless you have a way to reach your drone and rescue it by yourself. These last three features I spoke about, being waterproof, floating on the water, and flipping, are safety features. Now that we know it is covered, it is time to speak about some nice features that the drone has and which will help you during fishing. Another cool thing about the Fisherman Max is the auto drop and return feature. With most drones, in order to drop a bait, you need to do three things. First, fly your drone to the point where you want to drop your bait. Second, once you reach the point, you release the bait by pressing the button on the remote controller. And third, you fly the drone back to you. This entire process can take up to 5 minutes and sometimes even more. But with the Fisherman Max, SwellPro developed the FD2 app, which enables you to instruct the drone to reach a specific point, release the bait, and return back, all in one click. Now, this is an important feature since you can remain concentrated on your fishing all the time, not needing to handle both your drone and your rod. The next thing is optional with the Fisherman Max, and this is the camera. When I spoke about the remote controller, I told you that this drone comes in two flavors, basic and advanced. In terms of the drone itself, the only difference between the two, except for its price of course, is the camera. The basic model does not come with a camera on it, and on the contrary to the Splash Drones models, where the drone is a modular, the Fisherman Max is not, meaning you can't add a camera later on in case you bought the basic version. The advanced model come with a 4K camera and a stabilizer for smooth shooting and high quality videos. And in order to control the angle of the camera, it is mounted on a one-axis camera gimbal. Now, in case you are not familiar with the Splash Drone 304, where it comes with a 3-axis gimbal, here, since its audience is pure anglers and not photographers, this drone does not have a 3-axis gimbal, which could make the price higher by a few more hundreds of dollars. As for the live feed, the video is streamed directly to the remote controller, allowing you to see the places where you can drop the bait, and if you're lucky enough and a school of fish swims by, you can drop the bait in front of their nose, and by that raising dramatically your chances of catching a fish and even have it recorded. As much as the fishing capabilities are important, the Fisherman Max has other impressive capabilities that can ease your flying experience even further. Let's start with a few of them. The first thing I can mention is regarding the range of the Fisherman Max. There is nothing new compared to the previous models made by SwellPro, so with no surprise, the Fisherman Max can fly to distances up to 1 mile away, while other brands can fly further distances, like 7 kilometers. When it comes to fishing, 1 mile is way more than you need, considering the length of fishing line you can have on your reel. And after knowing so many anglers, I would say that 99% of the anglers I spoke to, they drop their baits between 250 meters to 400 meters away. Of course there are exceptions, but one thing for sure, in most places, dropping the baits further away than 400 meters does not raise your chances of catching a fish, nor offering bigger fish for you. And keep in mind that there are times during specific seasons where the big fish actually swims closer to shore than you would expect. The next feature I want to talk about is the calibration free. Now, in case you are new to drones in general needs to have calibration set from time to time. As an experienced drone fishing, I find myself quite frequently talking with drone pilots that fly the drones without them doing any calibration. While this is okay on certain conditions, still, failing to calibrate your drone can cause several problems, including a flyaway, which, if you're not familiar with this term, it simply means that your drone stopped responding correctly to your remote controller and increasing the chances of losing your drone for good. It doesn't matter how frequent your drone needs calibration, one thing is for sure, and that its calibration will be needed sometime. I encourage you to search on YouTube for drone calibration videos. You will find tons of videos showing you how to calibrate each specific drone model. And if you never saw someone doing it before, I can shortly summarize it by saying that the calibration process will make you look silly for a couple of minutes, since you and your drone will need to turn several times in different directions and angles. Now, back to the Fisherman Max. This drone does not need to get calibrated. And by not needing to calibrate, it takes out from you the hassle, it saves you some time on the beach, saves you from looking silly, and more importantly, it means that SwellPro understand that the audience for this drone are not tech people or professional drone pilots. The audience of this drone are fishermen, and they want you to concentrate in fishing and not in operating drones. While you might think that I'm exaggerating, trust me that I'm familiar with hundreds of anglers that started with drone fishing, and they want to look at drones as a simple fishing accessory, so this is an important step that I'm happy to see that SwellPro made. The next thing I would like to talk about is the GPS. Now, in general, a GPS plays a critical role in enhancing the capabilities, the safety, and the versatility of a drone. And while I'm not going to dive into the importance of it, I would mention that SwellPro says that they installed the latest generation of GPS inside the Fisherman Max. I would be honest and say that I wasn't aware too much about GPS versions, and by SwellPro saying that they have installed the 9th generation of GPS in the Fisherman Max, I took the chance and read more about it. But even though it was interesting for me, I'm not going to give you a tech lesson about GPSs. I will just mention the important things I think are important for you to know. So, the important things about the 9th generation of GPS is that it gets signals from up to 30 satellites at the same time, while in the previous generation it was 20. That means it gives you more coverage and more accuracy. And speaking about accuracy, the 9th generation has positioning accuracy of 1 meter compared to 2 meters in the previous generation. But that is not all. In general, the better the GPS is, the more accuracy in position determination you get, a better signal reception, and a better communication with more traditional GPS satellites. It also means that it integrates better with other sensors of the drone, such as the gyroscope and magnometer and some others. To make this simple, you can see the comparison between the 9th and the 8th generation now on the screen, just for your reference. So using the latest GPS in the Fisherman Max means a lot for it, even if it doesn't mean anything for you. The last feature I would like to talk about in this review is the pendulum free. And in order to understand its importance, you need to understand what is the pendulum effect and how does it affect drones, especially when they are carrying things such as baits for fishing. So the pendulum effect in drones refers to a situation that can cause instability and potentially lead to a crash. Imagine a drone flying in the air. The drone has a body, like we see here, where all the electronics are, and a hanging part underneath, a fishing bait in our case. Now, when the drone accelerates or changes direction suddenly, the body moves first. However, the bait tends to stay in place due to inertia, which is the force that keeps things still or in motion unless something acts on them. Now, because of this difference in movement between the body and the attached bait, the bait starts to swing back and forth, similar to a pendulum. This swinging motion can become more intense if the drone continues to change direction or speed. The problem arises when this swinging motion becomes too strong or uncontrollable. It can cause the drone to tilt or lose balance, making it harder for you to control the drone. Eventually, if the swinging becomes severe enough, it can lead to a crash because the drone loses stability and control. To prevent the pendulum effect crashing a drone designers use techniques like stability sensors and software as well as optimizing the design of the drone's body and attachments. Pilots also need to be aware of how the drone behaves in different flight conditions and avoid sudden jerky movements that can increase the swinging motion. While I asked SwellPro for more information about the pendulum free effect, which is supposed to reduce the effect and protect your drone, SwellPro could not provide me with more information about it and said that such information is confidential and they cannot provide more information about it. So the only thing I can say is that this feature sounds good and I will sure test it so you could see for yourself about that. Now, if you want to learn more about the pendulum effect in drones, I recommend you watching this video that will be here on the top. So far I spoke a lot and now it is time to assemble this drone. So first thing first, and I will start with charging the batteries. Charging and handling batteries is important since batteries can get over discharge if they are left untouched for a long time. And since your drone could have been waiting a long time on the shelf before shipping out, I highly recommend you to charge the batteries right after receiving the drone. And I personally had to throw away a couple of batteries after ignoring them for a few months after receiving them. And since these batteries are relatively expensive, you don't want to be in a position where you need to throw them away. For charging the battery, it is quite simple and straightforward. You take this cable and these red and black wires. You can see that they have this plastic cover. Don't try to take them out as they have spring inside of them, so when you plug them into the charger, they slide inside. And of course, no brainer here, you just need to follow the colors. The red wire goes inside the red socket and the same with the black one. And this white cable is the balance wire which you plug right next to it. Now, as for the other side of the cable, that goes to the side of the battery into the charging port. Don't get confused with this, as these are the connectors between the battery to the drone. Now, according to the outlet of the pins, you can easily determine the right direction of it, and that's it. As for the charging time, according to SwellPro website, it should take approximately 80 minutes to fully charge each battery, but I'm of course already charged the batteries ahead of time, and it took me 65 minutes for a charge, so when saying 80 minutes, it is the time that takes to charge a completely empty battery. Now, for this video, I show you how to plug all the wires on my carpet, but this is not where I actually charge the batteries. For me, I always charge my batteries on a surface that cannot catch fire, and this is of course for safety reasons. Another important thing is never charge your battery with no supervision. I highly recommend you not to do it since it can save you from a lot of sorrow and damage. I cannot express much how important it is to never leave your batteries unattended when charging them. But also, as I said, make sure to charge them on surfaces that does not catch fire. For example, ceramic tiles are good for this. In order to start charging the battery, connect the power cable and then use the switch button to turn it on. Once it is on, it will automatically try to recognize the battery. If it won't recognize, it will beep. And one thing to notice is that the charger initializes itself with the default charging amps of 6.5. And since the battery has a capacity of 4.5 amps, make sure to change it to the right value. Just use the buttons here to do that, and now that everything is all set, you start charging the battery by clicking here. That's it. Now simply wait for that to finish. It will notify you with the sound once it's over. After charging the drone's battery, let's move on to charging the battery of the remote controller. And this is even easier. For that, there is a black USB cable that's shipped with the drone. You simply plug this USB side to the charger and the other side to the remote controller. Now, as you can see, it is not that easy to reveal this socket with my finger. And I can understand why, as this remote controller is waterproof. So I will use something to help me, but be careful not to use a sharp object so you won't ruin by mistake the USB port on the other side. Now simply connect this USB side, which is called USB-C of the cable, to the remote controller, and on the contrary to the drone's batteries, you don't need to click on anything in order to start charging it. It simply charges it right away. Charging should take less time than the battery, of course. It took me less than 15 minutes for a complete charge. Now that everything is fully charged, next let's install the battery. And as you can see here, the battery has 4 security latches. So before placing it on the drone, make sure that the latches are unlocked. Slide the battery in its right position, which is easy according to these wire pins. Now I need to put some force in order to fully secure it into its place and locking the latches. And beware of putting too much force, because I'm worried of breaking the landing gears, and I do think that this thing should be reconsidered by SwellPro. So again, make sure to be careful while doing it. The arms of the Fisherman Max are foldable, and they should unfold in a specific order. If you will first unfold the rear arms, it will get stuck with the front arms. So first is unfolding the front arms, and only then the rear arms. Then there is this collar for each arm, and with that you will lock the arm in its place. You do that by sliding it till you get to the thread and then simply screw it. Okay, so we have the battery installed and the arms are unfolded. Next are the floaters. And as I said before, the floaters are very important since the drone cannot float on the water by itself. There are 4 floaters, which means that there is a floater for each arm, and you can see that all the floaters, like the arms, are at the same size and also have the same shape. So it means that there are no specific floaters for the front and the rear arms. It simply doesn't matter which floater goes to which arm. Now, looking at the floater itself, you can see that there is a white rubber here. And while I thought in the beginning that this rubber is needed, when I first tried to mount the floaters, I realized that it's not needed. So before putting the floaters, make sure to take out all of these white rubbers. Installing a floater is very simple. You first place the floater below the arm, and then you push this left side down, and then pushing this right side inside the left side, and finally closing the right side above it. Now I will show you that in a close-up and not on the arm itself, so you can understand what I mean. After closing this left side, you take the other side and slide this piece inside of that, and then close it above the left side. Keep in mind that this method should not be hard, so when you do that, if it does not close easily, it's probably since the right side did not get inside the left side correctly. So don't try to put too much force in it, so you won't accidentally break it. Now I will do that for the rest of the arms. And this is how it should look like when all the floaters are mounted on the drone. Okay, we are almost there. Let's move on and install the propellers. The propellers are 16 inches long, which is big. It is made of carbon fiber, which means that with this size and material, you need to be extremely careful when flying the drone next to people. For installing them, you have threading on both the propellers and the motors, and in order to match them correctly, you can see that each propeller has a letter on it. There are 2 propellers with the letter A and 2 propellers with the letter B. And the same goes for the motors. There are 2 motors with the letter A and 2 motors with the letter B. And if that is not enough to help you decide which propeller goes where, the propeller with the letter A have in addition this orange mark on them, and the motors with the letter A also have that mark on them. So visually it is very easy to know which propeller goes where. For mounting the propellers, you simply place the correct propeller on top of its matching motor. Keep in mind that the propellers with the letter A needs to be locked counterclockwise, and the propellers with the letter B need to be locked clockwise. Now I'm starting to lock this with my hand, but in order to firmly secure it, there is this special propeller key which makes it easier than securing it by hand. Now for safety reasons, I'm not going to mount the propellers on the drone since I'm at home and I just want to test the drone, and I'm not planning on flying it right now. As for the antennas, there is not much to say. You can decide between 2 orientations for the antennas. Now when flying the drone in the air, since it will be higher than you, so to get better reception, it is recommended to point the antennas downwards. But if you plan on flying the drone close to the water surface, it is better to point the antennas upwards. As for my recommendation, I put them downwards since, as I said before, I am not planning on landing the drone on the water. Now in order to set the orientation, there is a threading here, so just open the threading. decide the direction and then screw it, and that's it. Last is the camera. There is no installation for the camera. Here you can see the one-axis gimbal I told you before, and if I tilt it, you can see the micro SD slot, and you can put here a micro SD card of up to 128 gigabytes, which gives you an approximate of 4 to 6 hours of video recording in 4K quality. Of course, you can get more hours if you reduce the video quality to 2.7K or even further in Full HD. So I covered all the features of the Fisherman Max, and now that everything is charged and installed, it is finally time to turn this beast on. I'll start with turning the remote controller on. For that, I simply click and then click and hold on the power button, and I keep holding it until the FN light is turned on as well.
Please toggle up all switches.
Now, if some switches on the controller are not toggled up, you will hear this warning.
Please toggle up all
So
switches.
just make sure that all switches are toggled up and this warning will go away. Now, since the drone is not powered, we don't have anything on the screen yet. So let's go and turn it on as well. Turning the drone is the same like the remote controller. You click and then click and hold. I am impressed with how fast it loads and communicates with the remote controller, and there is also the notification confirming the connectivity between the drone and the remote controller. Another thing to mention is that I cannot see a delay between the camera and the remote controller, which is also great. And while I'm at home and these notifications seemed a bit annoying at first, considering I'm at the beach, it can be very helpful and important. So let's start reviewing what we see on the remote controller screen. I will start with the top left. This icon refers to the flight mode. You have three options, which are G, that stands for GPS. This is the safest mode to fly the drone, and honestly, I recommend you not to change it. In this mode, you will get aid in automatic positioning. So for example, let's say you want to be on top of a specific point. Winds normally push the drone up, down, and to the sides. So in GPS mode, it remembers where you positioned it, and if the winds pushes the drone to the left, the flight controller automatically fixes it. So eventually, you won't see that the drone is moving at all, and it keeps the drones locked in its place. The next mode is the cruise mode, which appears with the C letter here. This mode means that once you push one of the sticks, forward for example, and before leaving it you move the drone to cruise mode, then you can leave the stick and the drone will continue in that direction. If you choose to use this mode, be very careful. The last mode is the ATTI mode. ATTI stands for attitude mode, and this is a flight mode where the GPS positioning and other visual positioning systems are disabled. That means that you are flying the drone on your own with no any kind of assistance. The advantage in this mode is flying speed, but in fishing drone I find it less effective, especially when you fly the drone with the bait underneath it, just because of the pendulum effect that I mentioned before. And even though it has a pendulum-free features, always do your best to protect your drone regardless of its features. Again, I recommend you to keep the GPS mode at all times, but that is of course up to you. Next to it is the number of satellites it connects to. Now I'm at my home now, so less signals are available, but in my next video, where I will take it to a test, I expect it to have more than that. Below we can see that it's indicating that the remote controller is connected with the drone. In the middle, it informs you with the channel you are connected to. This might be less important for you now. Next, on the right side here, we can see the signal between the drone and the remote controller, and next to it is the battery life. You can see it is full. Below that, you can see the video quality that the drone will record. The default is 2.7K at 60 frames per second, and at the bottom you can see the direction of the drone and also more information, which will be speed and more things. Another option with the Fisherman Max is connecting it to your phone, but I will make another video on how to do that and what other options you get by connecting it to your phone. Let's continue with the remote controller. Next to the flight modes, we have the button to return the drone back home. On the left side, we have the payload switch. Now, the Fisherman Max can take 2 baits at the same time. Let me show you that on the drone. So this is a great option SwellPro added, and to support that on the remote control, you can see that this is a 3 switch button, where it says off, which means that this is how you fly with both baits. Switching to payload A on the remote releases the first one, and switching to payload B means it will release the second one. Last, on the front of the remote, you have these up and down buttons. These are for controlling the camera angle. I will click on down and you can see the camera goes down, and I will click up and it goes back up. Very simple and very straightforward. So after reviewing the features of the drone, the most important question is how much this drone cost. Well, as for today, the price of the basic version is 2,000 euros, and if you want the advanced, the price is 2,400 euros. Now the question is, does it worth the price? Well, the Fisherman Max is definitely not a toy, and I expect to use it for a long time. While usually I'm not fishing with heavy baits, still the Fisherman Max is not intended only to that, so for me the price worth it. And you can be sure that I will post more videos with this drone soon. So wrapping up, I'm very impressed with the Fisherman Max drone. It is definitely a great improvement comparing to previous models I saw made by SwellPro, and I do expect to see more improvements by them, such as I would like to have their holder fits also tablets and not only phones, as I usually use my iPad for that. Another thing that bothers me is the difficulty with mounting the battery inside the drone's body. I had to put some force in order to secure it in its place, and I was concerned breaking the landing gears while doing it. And at the same time, when taking out the battery, I also had to put some force to take it out. Another thing is, since the floaters are shipped in their box outside of the carry case, therefore I would appreciate SwellPro making a dedicated and proper placement for them inside the carry case. Other than that, it has a great features and it's easier for flying when comparing it to previous models. The price of the drone is definitely not cheap, but for what it offers, I think it is a decent deal. I do have high expectations from this drone, and I will keep you posted as I test it even further. So thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it, and please don't forget to write down any questions you might have about this drone, and I promise I will answer them all. So that's it, and I will see you in my next video.